What if I told you that the Soviet invasion of Afghanistan wasn't really an invasion at all? What actually was happening was that an Islamic resistance was threatening the Soviet influence in the area, and they stepped in to get rid of the issue with the help of Afghanistan's own forces. Hey everyone, welcome to 101 History, and today we're going to be talking about the Soviet-Afghan War. The Soviet-Afghan War, also known as the Soviet invasion of Afghanistan, was actually a conflict between the Communist Democratic Republic of Afghanistan and Islamic fundamentalist rebels, also known as the Mujahideen. The Soviets saw Afghanistan as a valuable ally and chose to step in and assist their fellow communists against the insurgents, which unfortunately led to tons of international political tension that eventually led to the withdrawal of Soviet forces. The conflict began not long after Chairman Nur Muhammad Taraki seized control of Afghanistan after the Communist Sour Revolution. The failure of the newly established communist government to treat its people with care and eliminate social classes as intended led to major instability. Many people in Afghanistan are Muslim, and communism and Islam are not compatible beliefs. They do share some common elements, but there are many beliefs that a Muslim has which they have to put above everything else. This will not work with communism. The Mujahideen are a loosely related group of various jihadists whose common goal was to make an Islamic republic instead of the communist government that was in place in Afghanistan. In order to combat this new insurgency, the chairman of the Democratic Republic of Afghanistan, Nur Muhammad Taraki, began imprisoning and murdering several thousands of Muslims and other dissenters. These were likened to Stalin's purges during his reign. Taraki tried almost every method in the book to silence the insurrection, but nothing was working for him. His so-called allies to the north, the Soviet Union and their leader, Leonid Brezhnev, took notice of this after the Afghanistan government asked for their help and sent the 40th Army down to deal with the insurrections. When the army arrived, they staged a coup and overthrew the president, replacing him with Barbara Kemal. This greatly angered the Mujahideen and other Arab Muslim nations, and they demanded that the Soviets withdraw. They did not, and began occupying major towns and crippling infrastructure so that the Mujahideen could not operate their guerrilla war. A guerrilla war is where small groups of armed people attacked larger regular armies using various ambush and hit-and-run tactics. Angering Pakistan was not a good choice for the Soviet Union, however. Pakistan is an ally of the US, the UK, and all of the other Arab nations due to its Islamic culture and acceptance of the West, along with its membership in the Commonwealth of Nations. The Mujahideen sought assistance and got it from Pakistan and other Shia Mujahideen groups. Pakistan then asked for help from the US and the UK, and with this, the Mujahideen were well equipped to combat the Soviets. One of the major factors was the donation of Stinger missiles by the United States through the CIA, which could take down Soviet helicopters which prevented air raids and deterred bombings. One of the groups that the Pakistan CIA alliance funded was a group led by Osama bin Laden, now known as the founder of the well-known terrorist organization Al-Qaeda. The insurgents began to win in the mid to late 1980s, with not only their Stinger missiles, but training and assistance from the Allied countries helping out the Mujahideen. The Soviets could not launch a successful offensive, and while on the defensive, the Mujahideen used the Soviet tactic of crippling infrastructure in order to prevent the Soviet forces from using roads, electricity, water, etc. They suffered large losses due to these tactics, and the war became extremely unpopular. With Mikhail Gorbachev coming to power, he wanted more transparency and freedom in the Soviet government, and through these policies, he sought an end to the Soviet involvement in the war. He began to remove troops from the area and train Afghan forces using advisors. February 15, 1989 was the last day that official Soviet troops were on the ground. Internationally, the war was a flop. The only countries that supported the invasion were countries under Soviet influence. It was panned by NATO and especially the United States, drawing in support for the insurgents by the US and NATO, releasing statements asking for the invasion to stop. Because of this panning, the United States and many of its allies boycotted the 1980 Olympics that were held in Moscow. Many of the non-aligned countries were split on how to deal with this issue. Some touted it as a legitimate action, whereas others felt it was illegal and wrong. So, why does this matter? Well, it had many lasting effects that we are still seeing the results of today. For one, the US arming the Mujahideen allowed for groups like Al-Qaeda and the Taliban to form due to their money and arms received from Pakistan, the United States, and their allies. There is a theory called blowback that says that funding the Mujahideen led to the 9/11 attacks, but that is just a theory. Also, even though the Soviets left, the war didn't end. Afghanistan continued to have a civil war between the government and the Mujahideen for several more years after, and remnants of that conflict linger today. Attacks from the former insurgents turned terrorists still happen almost daily in Afghanistan. The US invaded to stop these attacks, which was ironic due to the United States supporting them only 30 years earlier. Finally, the last major influence was the weakening of the Soviet Union. Being defeated by insurgents was an embarrassment for the Soviet Union, and thusly made people lose faith in their government. It made the Red Army seem weak, and thusly the threat of invasion of the Eastern European countries by the Soviets seemed like a joke. This made them more likely to begin revolting, and they did. The Red Army kept suffering losses due to their low morale, and their invasion of Afghanistan was that catalyst. I hope you enjoyed watching our video on the Soviet invasion of Afghanistan. Narration was done by me, Kyle, the animation by Dustin, and the research, editing, and everything else was done by Jeremy, Max, and Sean. This is Kyle for 101 History, signing off.